Hi everyone, welcome to Zen and Tech, our weekly show focused on centering your inner geek and using technology to help you deal with the stresses of your connected life. I'm Rene, and the host of your show is Georgia. Before we begin, I just want to remind you that while Georgia is a therapist, she's not your therapist. Everything said or implied on this episode is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and shouldn't be taken in any way as a replacement for proper professional care. So, Georgia, how are you today?
I am tired, doing well, a slight mishap with my phone.
What happened?
Well, my beloved iPhone 5, carrying way too much, just finished a fabulous group with a whole bunch of amazing people, carrying everything out, trying to balance the donuts, didn't want to drop the donuts, and I caught the donuts yet dropped my phone. Probably not the best of choices on my
You saved
part.
the donuts instead of your phone. The $2 box of donuts instead of your multi-$100 phone.
I know, and the phone cracked into 100,000 pieces, so yeah.
Oh. You must have a Homer Simpson level love for them donuts.
Man, I don't even know how. Like, really? It didn't even fall that far to the ground, but it's cracked in like 100,000 pieces.
All right, so we have to give you a little bit of sympathy tonight. Is the subject dealing with broken iPhones? Is that the subject for today?
Today it is a Q&A, and sorry, before I have something in my eye.
You have a shard of your iPhone stuck in your eye?
Oh, and it's so busted up. Interestingly enough, that, yeah, it's so badly busted up that I can't even use it. It's unusable.
Georgia, this is why you can't have nice things.
I know. Car broken into. This.
Yeah, you had the windshield of your car broken.
Your
computer bag stolen, which luckily did not have a computer in it at the time.
The funniest part of that is that I had a really nice new bag for carrying your iPad, your laptop in. It was a backpack. I loved it. I was going to give this bag a fabulous review, and that was what was in the back of my car. So someone right now is going around with my stolen bag that I never got to review. So that bag is so fabulous.
So if you stole Georgia's bag, please send the review on over to us, just so that we can at least run the review.
Yeah, it's such a good bag. It's worth stealing, and it was stolen. So I guess that's a pretty good review for it.
So
if nothing else.
You and glass this week just do not mix.
No, it's been a little bit of a rough week.
All right. So what is our subject for today?
Today is straight up Q&A. You ask the questions, I will answer them. And
so is this, you've done a series of, which I think are absolutely excellent, parenting episodes for the last few weeks. So is this Q&A focused on parenting specifically, or is it parenting and some other stuff?
It is pretty much any questions that you might very well have.
Okay.
And I'll try to give it an answer, whatever it might be.
Would you like me to ask the questions and you can answer them, or do you want to just read them out and go straight into them?
Well, why don't you ask the questions and I'll answer them up.
All right. I know you sent them to me. I am just looking for them. All right. Here we go. So this is from Julie. She asks, what is the most common mistake that parents make?
There's a lot of mistakes that happen right now in parenting. I think that one of the most primal mistakes, one of the first things that you need to have if you're deciding to become parents, is to have a discussion on which way you parent and what do you think the rules for your house should be. If both parents are not on the same page with what rules are going to be applied and how they're going to be applied, in which manner, then you're going to have a lot of issues in parenting, and it causes a lot of fights. If you are undercutting your mate in front of your children, it's disrespecting them, and your children won't respect them either. And then after a while, children learn to split between parents. So one parent becomes the good parent, one parent becomes the bad parent. So at least if both parents are on the same page, these are the rules. This is what happens if the rules are broken. There's a calm that happens in the household.
And children know, right? Like, children are smart creatures. They have strategy, they have tactics, and they will try to split their parents just so they get what they want.
Exactly that. Not only will they try to split the parents, but they'll be exceptionally good at it. So what we want to do is, decide beforehand. Decide before you are upset what you think the rules should be of your house. And then you don't have to worry as much. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree on everything, but you have to back up your mate in parenting, even if they make a decision that you don't think is right. Don't discuss it in front of the children. Discuss it afterwards somewhere where it's private.
Is it better to avoid unilateral decisions? Like, should you have a policy that if a kid comes and says, "Can I sleep over at such and such a house?" that you don't say yes or no, but you talk to your spouse, because they might, so the kid can't just go back and forth and ask both of you and get different answers?
Well, I think that a really good rule is that if they ask one parent, they can't go off and ask the other parent. That in and of itself is disrespectful because you've already gotten an answer. If you say, well, go ask the other parent, or I have to wait, like you can say, I'm going to talk to your mom about this, or I'm going to talk to your dad about this first, and then we'll decide together. That's also a fair decision. Sometimes it's impossible, and you have to make a split-second decision that your mate may not agree with. But at least if you've discussed some of the most important things, like discipline, respect, boundaries, and what those consequences will be to those boundaries, at least then you have the groundwork. And if every once in a while you're going to make a decision that your mate might not agree with, but it's going to be rarer. And so respect is one of the most important things.
So what about cases where the parents don't live together and the child has a greater opportunity? Maybe they're already set one against the other. Or when there's a single parent and you have to deal with the guilt of, they're already missing one parent. Maybe I should give in on these things.
I think that parental guilt is an epidemic in our culture right now. I believe that the pendulum swung too far. Parents used to be exceptionally strict. And so we have a whole generation of children that grew up with exceptionally strict parents. And because of that, because their parents were so harsh, so cold, didn't listen to them, the pendulum has swung the opposite way. And now we end up with parents that are, I often get the comment of, I want to be friends to my child and I want to talk to them about everything. And we discuss, whatever questions they might have. There's some times when, no's just no. And that should be fine. If you're having a discussion with everything with your 4-year-old, you're going to end up having a out of control 4-year-old. Well, and that's ridiculous. I see a 4-year-old running around with scissors and the parents are discussing why running around with scissors is wrong. I'm like, the child knows that they shouldn't be running around with scissors. You've told them probably a million times before. You do not need to have a discussion. Now you're teaching them to disrespect you. Or you're doing something else, teaching them that you are at the equal level of an adult. And I think that child learning that there is a hierarchy in the world and that you must respect certain people, even if you don't like them. And I often have parents say that they want their children to learn, no, actually respect is earned. Well, no, you know what? Sometimes respect isn't. You have a teacher, you have a police officer, you have a doctor that you're going to have to. There's a certain amount of saying, you know what, this is a line. If they're going to do something wrong or harmful, I can disrespect them. But there's also, you know what, you have to give for a certain amount of reasons. So sometimes we just swing a little bit too far onto the other side.
I want to go back to the split parent households in a second, but I used to get the thing that, if someone breaks into the house and I tell you to be quiet, it can't be a discussion. I have to have trained you to the point where if there is danger, you listen to me. Otherwise, I have failed as a parent.
Right. You have one job as a parent. And that is to help your children become able to mitigate life without you, not to become dependent upon you. And they have lots of friends. They only have one set of parents. Some have two, but in the end, that's what they need you for.
So when you are in a split home and you're maybe living with one parent part of the time and the other parent, or you're living with one parent but you have the other parent in your life, how do the parents handle splitting that way when they just can't be on the same page?
Well, even if you are not on the same page with each other, one is you shouldn't let that bleed into your children, your own fighting, but you should still be on the same page in parenting. If you are not, though, because you have completely different manners of dealing with discipline, you can still say, you know what, that might happen at your mom's place, but these are the rules here and I expect them to be abided by. And yes, you will end up having splitting, and the more strict parent is often at a certain stage the one that takes the brunt of the anger because they're more disciplined during that time. But I promise you, later in life, your children will respect you and thank you for that because you've taught them lessons that are important to learn.
All right, absolutely. Should we go on to the next one?
Sure.
All right, so this is from Jose. Jose says his child is 7 and still sleeps with his mother or with me or with us. His mother goes to bed with him in his bed and stays there. She leaves me alone. The bottom line here is that he cannot sleep alone. What can we do at this stage to teach him to do that? I'm conscious that we are a bit lazy and we choose to let him sleep with us in order for us to get sleep.
Right, and it's exhausting, and this is very common. There's certain cultures where children do spend a lot of time in the parental bed. The problem is that your child is not learning how to self-soothe. If they are using you to soothe, and you might end up with a child that is 15 and can't go to sleep alone or has a lot of anxiety with learning to get to sleep. So the easiest way, if it is not working for you, there's kind of two different ways to go about it. One is grading it. One is that if the child, you start off by saying, listen, if you have a nightmare, you can sleep, but you sleep on the floor, not in the bed. So that's the first step, is that it goes from the bed.
It shouldn't be somewhere comfortable. It should be somewhere proximal.
Well, it's like the first, this is like doing a desensitization. So they start on the floor, they bring, their stuff, you can set it up for them at first. And then next they have to bring their blankets there if they want to. They start off in their bed, and yes, they're not going to be thrilled with that. And then you want them to be really tired the first few days that you teach them. They should go to bed in their bed no matter what. And then after that, if they get up in the middle of the night, they pop into your bed, you put them onto the floor, they wake up, they get back into the bed. Now this is exhausting. It takes about 4 days, and you'll be exhausted because they will wake up all through the night and try to sneak into the bed. You have to be steadfast. Take naps during the day if you have to, because retraining a child to learn how to self-soothe themselves is difficult, and you'll feel guilty. That parental guilt is really strong. So during this, you'll feel guilty. You move them down to the bed, then you move them on to, then you put them back into their room after a certain period of time. If the child is younger, say 2 or 3, you can put up a little tiny gate in front of their bedroom. Some parents find that this is exceptionally harsh and don't like to do it. So you don't have to, but if that works for you, that's fine. And really, they are going to cry. They are going to be upset about that. But know that you're learning them teaching them how to sleep. Plus, you're not going to get a really great night's sleep if your child is in the bed with you. The second problem with that, besides the self-soothing, because I know some 20-year-olds that still have that need that they can't be alone in bed because their parents have given in to this. I'm going to sneeze 1 second. Did you really put me full screen for me to sneeze?
Well, you didn't warn me.
That's so horrible. Thank you.
We'll fix that in post. We'll add a second one.
Yeah, sure you will. So the second problem is that you're not spending your intimate time with your spouse. You have a child in the same bed, and you need some time for yourself. You're with your children all through the day. Sleep is your time for yourself. So it's another second thing.
Well, you also need a strong relationship with your spouse in order to provide a good foundation for your children, right?
Yeah, and you need both of you to be on the same page of saying, listen, this isn't okay. They have to go into their own bed. You have to discuss it. And I think that often moms are harder on themselves for this than fathers are. That's usually the case that I see, that it's the moms that are like, yeah, but I feel bad, and they cry, and this is what, they feel like that's their role, is to teach them to soothe. You can sit on the bed after, and then you sit a little bit further away. But once you take a step back, don't go, once you take a step forward, don't take a step backwards. You have to keep on grading it. The faster that you can do it, the least distressful it is for the child. So sometimes parents spend weeks just sitting up at the bed and waiting till the child falls asleep. You always want to make sure that your child learns that they go to sleep, though, on their own. You don't want to stay with them in their bedroom no matter what.
Now, it's one of those things that a lot of times humans seem to create, we seem to create more problems by hesitating. Like they call it lazy. I don't really think it's lazy. I think it's like jumping into the pool or pulling off the bandage. It seems like it's going to scare you, so you don't. You do tiny little things and you make it worse for yourself instead of just doing it, like you said, doing those 4 days, getting it done, and then everything after that is much easier.
Yeah, I don't think it's lazy. I think it's usually just guilt. And if they had issues with sleep themselves, then they worry. They think that their child is scared. But what you're teaching them is you're not teaching them how to empower themselves and how to believe in themselves.
All right. So our next question from Sandy. I have lost my interest in sex with my husband and is putting a strain on my marriage. What can I do?
Well, there's a lot of things. It would depend on why you've lost, and again, the fact that you, like, women's libido as their estrogen levels go down and their testosterone goes up usually actually gets, it depends on her age as well, so gets higher from the 20s up until their 40s, where they pretty much reach their peak. So it could be just that. Some women have a higher sex drive than others. It could also be anger. If things are happening in the marriage and you don't feel close, you don't feel secure, that could be an issue as well. And some women are just have a lower libido. So if that is the case, there's pharmaceutical things that you can do. You can ask your GP or your gynecologist, and there's topical creams, there's pills that you can take that can increase your libido, just like there is for men. And sex is an important thing in a relationship. It's a way that you bond. It's a way that you share intimacy and that type of closeness. And as with everything, you're having a relationship, even when you become a parent, it's still important that you have a relationship with your husband that's intimate, besides just becoming a parent and then you forget about everything else. So though often women, say, you know what, sex isn't important, it really is, and often it will be to your mate. It's the way that you show love and affection.
Or you have the child in the bed, or you just had the child and everything is I mean, there are milestones in life that change normalcy, and people might not be adjusting to those or giving themselves time to adjust to those, right?
Or you might be just exhausted.
Yeah.
Spending way too much time doing other things and then putting this off. You want to make sure that you spend time with each other. Good, happy, strong parents will help make good, happy, strong children. And it'll also teach your children that that's something important when they find in their own relationship, that they can have a bond, have a closeness. So if you're upset at your husband, talk about it. And husbands, if your wife does not have a very strong libido, or if for some reason she's pulling back, some of the most important things would be maybe doing something like, not just
the dishes,
but do the dishes, put things away, get her comfortable clothing at the end of work done,
remove the roadblocks.
Meal. You want to give her time and space and make her feel appreciated. That is probably one of the highest links to a woman's libido, is feeling cared for, special, and precious.
And you've also made a point, like you're saying this in terms of a relationship, but there's also a self-care aspect to this too, right? It's part of your life, part of your existence, and you're advocating that for yourself as well.
Unfortunately, especially for women, depending on your culture and depending on your, say, religion and your upbringing, for girls, often sex is seen as something bad, even in marriage, that it's looked down upon, and they shouldn't be.
Or as a duty.
They shouldn't be sexual beings. And it's a little bit sad. So sometimes you might even have to take a look at your own thoughts on sex and culture and look at that.
At the end of the day, people deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy. Even if you're tired, if you're stressed, you deserve to be happy.
Exactly. And again, if your libido is just low, and that's fine, and the same thing for your husband, there's no issue in between that, then that's great. But if there is an issue, you should take a look into it, because there are ways of changing that. And life is short. Enjoy it.
Phil asks, Georgia, I have never felt worthwhile, and I don't know what to do to increase my self-esteem.
Self-esteem is a really rough one. It's something hard to build up. We often have different ways in which we deal with that. And I think that one of the most important things is full, complete self-acceptance. Like self-acceptance, not when I lose weight while if I'm making more money, that you need to accept yourself for the good parts and for the bad parts. That's the key to self-esteem. After that, if you're, go out a little bit more, stretch, deal with things that you're not comfortable in doing, try something new, learn a new skill, have fun, meet people that you feel good about. And it could also be because you might be depressed or anxious, or you've gone through a very significant life change. So you'd have to look at that as well. If you've just lost your job, yeah, you're going to take a huge self-esteem hit. Or if you're dealing with a divorce or someone just passed away, you might be going through a depression. So you might want to look at what exactly is happening in your life, and then what are the effects because of that.
Now, you've previously talked about the idea of the bubble and how certain things will make our bubble grow smaller. So, for example, you're afraid of driving on highways, and you're afraid of driving on big roads, and you're afraid of driving on any roads. Is the opposite true? If you get several small victories, can that empower you to start increasing your bubble again?
It can, if you start doing things a little bit outside of your comfort zone and start to feel confident, in being able to do it successfully, or that even though you didn't do it successfully, you feel good about yourself. Like, the thing with it is that some people are naturally a little bit more positive and some are a little bit more pessimistic. Pessimistic people usually are a little more accurate on how that they evaluate themselves, but they're not as happy. So if you have the choice, try to be more positive, be good to yourself. I often deal with people that are type A and they can't even say like compliment to themselves or don't feel proud of something that they did. That's important. If you're not giving yourself those little tiny M&Ms as you go through your life, then why are you going to do something that's really difficult? It becomes too daunting a task. So be good to yourself. You do something, but you know what? I listened to myself. I did a little extra work at the job today, or even the opposite. I was tired and I let myself have a nap. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and Jimmy in the chat room has a question here, and this goes back to one of the first topics. If other people's kids are in your home, so I'm guessing, if it's a step situation or if you're living together, other people's kids, how far can you go to enforce what you feel is appropriate behavior?
Oh, that's a really, really good
awesome question.
I think that's fabulous. These days, it used to be, and my feeling is that anyone else in my home, it's my rules, and I wouldn't feel bad in correcting someone else's child. Nowadays, it's completely different. You talk harshly, or now children are so bubble wrapped that they're not even used to having someone talk sternly to them. They completely break down, and the parents will do the same thing. They think that their first thing that they should do is defend their child, even if they're doing something horribly wrong. So my thought on this is it depends on the relationship. So if they are family to me, I'm all good with correcting another child. I do it in a nice way.
That's your family, right?
Yes, if it's within
nieces, nephews.
Yes. I feel fine in correcting them. It doesn't bother me at all, but I do it in a very nice way. The manner in which you do it is how it will be interpreted by the child and by the parents. So if you are saying something, even if it's harsh, and I say, Jimmy, stop touching that. And I'm looking like this, Jimmy, stop touching that. The parents are going to be like, whoa, what was up with that? But if I say, hey, Jimmy, can you please not touch that on the table, please? And then he doesn't listen. I'm like, Jimmy, you have to stop touching what's on the table. And then I might go over really nicely and herd him away from whatever priceless object they're about to break. That is nice. If you can deal with it in that way, and often parents will get the hint and help their child herd them away.
Jimmy, put the Fabergé egg back in the box.
Yeah, no. Some parents don't. They don't care, or they're completely oblivious to that. Now, again, if they are touching something that is priceless, you can yell at them, but you might lose a friendship over that. So you have to kind of look, is the Fabergé egg worth losing the friendship with Fred over it or not? And you can kind of know by their parental method if they don't mind their child being talked to by someone. But again,
children are master tacticians, brilliant strategists. And for example, in a stepchild situation, you're not my father, you're not my mother. They're very good at pushing buttons. Mom, protect me. And they're very good at manipulating situations where they feel like even if it costs them later in life, they feel like they're gaining something short term.
Right, and it's up to the parents to deal with that. It is not actually up to you. But again, if it's your things, I make the rules and I make them really stern. And I will actually say to the parents after, if the child doesn't do it, hi, would you mind, that's, the priceless $100,000.
Hold on. I'm going to hold you back to this though, because I'm talking about like when you're actually in a relationship and you have other people's kids living with you, not just visiting, not family members' kids, but stepkids or girlfriends' kids, because I think that's the hard situation.
You have to know, you have to have an agreement beforehand. I don't think that it is fair. You are not their parent, and the child will always say that, but you are living together as a family unit. So you have to talk to the other person and say, what are my boundaries? And I would say specifically that I would like to be a parental, I'm not the father, but I would like to be like a parental mentor in this and have a say in the way that things happen in your home. If not, you will feel helpless and angry, and you don't want that.
So that goes back to your original answer, where parents just have to communicate and they have to be on the same page about child rearing.
And you should, in almost all cases, the blood parent, the biological parent, should be the one that disciplines the child, but you should have already an agreement on what the rules are. So if you can say, you know what, I saw, Fred sneaking out of the house smoking. Can you take care of this? And you, as the biological parent, should do that, because you don't want to be the evil step parent either. It's not fair, and it's very, very stressful. Someone asked about working in retail and seeing kids messing around with the cleanliness in the store, and the parents haven't seen it. That's also another tough one. And the manner in which you approach children is really important. So it's the same thing. You want to get down to their level and say, hey, you can't do that because I have to clean them all up again. But do it in a way that isn't like a joke, because then they'll think that it's funny. And often when you work in retail, you try to joke around with the child, and then they just think that that's hilarious. So you want to be a little bit stern, soft, so that it's between yourself and the child, and say, please don't do that. If not, go straight to the parent and say, excuse me, would you mind, just watching out, because I think that he might break something. And you say it for the parent, like you're helping them. And I would hate to have, something be charged on you, because I'm sure that you wouldn't want to have to pay for something.
Consequences.
Exactly. And then it puts it into the parent's role. If they do break something, you're dealing with it. Now, if they're just going around and you're working in a clothing store and they're just taking all of the shirts and destroying them, I would say just let it go at first, because you don't want to get in trouble with your manager if the parents happen to complain. And some parents, unfortunately, in this society will. But then I would say go back. If it's getting really out of hand, I would say to the parent, would you mind, just being careful, because they seem to be making a real mess, and I don't want the shirts to be stepped on, or give them a reason for that.
It's interesting. I remember, I like you said earlier with the generations, I remember my parents' generation just being, for example, petrified of schools and authority. And then in my generation, if I got in trouble at school, I would come home and get in trouble for getting trouble in school. And now I often see kids get in trouble at school, and the parents getting angry at the teacher for getting the kid in trouble. So it really is that sort of pendulum swing you were describing.
Right. And it doesn't teach children accountability for their own actions. That sometimes you have to deal with people that you don't like, that sometimes you have to listen to rules that you don't want to, and that though you will listen to their version of the story, sometimes someone will make a bad call and you have to abide by it.
Life isn't fair.
It isn't fair, and you have to be respectful. You have to learn how to mitigate life. So if you're always backing up your child, you're teaching them that they don't have to be responsible. They can lie and get out of it. And then what's going to happen when they work at a job? I have all of these children, and they're actually young adults that come and see me, and they say, you know what, it wasn't because of me, because of my alarm, because this happened, my dog did this, and I couldn't get in late. They make a lot of excuses. They're never, I find it almost refreshing when someone says, you know what, I did something wrong. It was me, and I'm sorry. I'm like, whoa, amazing. And it's sad that I am shocked and amazed that someone has taken responsibility when they've made a mistake. I love that. I love that. I would hire someone that would say, you know what, I did something wrong and I'm sorry. That was my mistake. That's probably one of those
even our politicians
things.
aren't good examples of that anymore. We are not in an era of statesmen. The last question, I think it was from Paul C., who asked for tips on getting better sleep habits. And before you mention any, I'll just say that we did an episode, I think our second or third episode was all about sleep. So make sure you check that for an in-depth look at the subject.
Right. Yes, Jimmy was also saying about, being well-behaved. Manners are a dying art form right now with children. You want to give your children a step up, teach them good manners. Everyone will adore them and they will get jobs. This texting generation, no one has manners, and we'll definitely deal with how important that is with children on one of the later episodes. Sleep. There are lots of different things, and it would depend on why you're not sleeping. Some people do not sleep as well or as deeply. Some people have sleep apnea, which is that they have a breathing problem with their air passageway while they sleep. So you want to get that checked out. You might want to go to a sleep clinic. They'll test you out to see if that's the problem. If that is ruled out, you shouldn't eat too close to when you're sleeping, because then your body is digesting and you're not at rest. You should also write down anything that bothers you in a journal right before your bed. And you can take, I'm bothered about, I have to remember these 3 things. So you're not going to be racing through them in your mind. And this is the way I'm going to handle it. I try to get my clothing ready before I go to sleep. I also like to have my bath or shower before I go to sleep, so I have more time to sleep in. Because for me, it's harder to go to sleep early, and then I like to sleep in the morning.
And you also have an absolute no video games rule.
Yes, I never ever play video games before I go to sleep. Okay, that I do. You shouldn't though, because or at least if you play a video game, it should be something a little bit dull. So Sudoku, a word game, reading different articles. You don't want anything to be too exciting because you'll stay awake in order to do it. Same thing with listening to TV. Though I do have white noise playing in the background, so I don't hear any coughing or sputtering that might keep me awake from any of my little creatures.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned before that you shouldn't have like a foosball machine next to your bed. You should create an environment that promotes sleep.
And that your room should be cooler, should be dark, and it should be calm in its setting, so not cluttered and filled with all kinds of mess. And sleep should be for two things. It should be for sex and it should be for sleep. So if you're doing your work at your bed, then unconsciously you are going to be relating the two to each other, and you're not going to be sleeping as well.
And if you're sitting there with a huge pile of papers, a pencil behind your ear, and a calculator, you're probably not getting much sleep or sex. So you're doing everything wrong.
Right. And then buy a good mattress. You spend 1/3 of your life in your bed, get a good mattress. I just recently bought a mattress. It's probably one of the best purchases that I ever made. Fabulous. Get a nice, comfortable mattress, firmer than softer, but test them out and see what you feel comfortable with. And the same thing for a pillow. Oh, and you want to be a little bit cool. We fall asleep better if we're warm, but we stay asleep better if we're a little bit cool in the room, and then your blankets keep you warm.
Diamond in the chat room also points out that you don't want to be a crime fighter out, sweeping the streets every night, because that severely, if you're the Batman, that severely interferes with your sleep habits. Well, point well taken, Diamond.
That's true. That's true. Though, if you're Batman, that's cool. So
yeah, you gotta buy. Georgia, I love the Q&A episodes. We try to do them regularly. We try to do them every few episodes, and hopefully we'll do another one. If people have additional questions, you can write in, because we'll try to do some questions every episode, and we'll do another Q&A episode sometime soon.
Great.
All right. So where can we find out more about you?
You can find me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPV, and you can also find me on the website, zenandtech.tv.
Very nice. And you can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at Zen and Tech. You can email us at podcast@zenandtech.tv, or just leave a comment on this show when it goes live on the site. For all of our shows, check out mobilenations.com/shows. And I want to thank everyone who sent in questions and everyone who joined in on the chat room. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. This really is the most important show that we do, and I think one of the most important podcasts in podcastdom. So I appreciate everyone turning out.
Thanks, everyone. The chat room makes it so much more fun. So if you can, join us live.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. And Steve just shows up.
Steve!
We'll do an episode on tardiness, Steve.
Yeah.
Very nice, Georgia. I thought that was excellent.
Good.
So now your next course of action is to get your iPhone 5 repaired?
Oh, man. Yes, I have to get my iPhone 5 repaired.
We have to do an episode dealing with the stresses of breaking your smartphone. I think Kevin has broken 2 in the last month.
The damn donuts. I can't believe it.
I can't believe you didn't drop the donuts and save the phone.
I didn't know that the phone was in my hand. I was carrying all of this. One of my people so sweetly got me a new pair of boots, and I was carrying my boots, I was carrying my purse, I was carrying my jacket.
It was sitcom worthy.
I had all of these things. I was carrying this huge box of donuts with only like a couple of donuts that was left in it, trying to lock the door to the building, and then I'm like balancing everything. The donuts start to slide. I don't want to lose them. So in my infinite wisdom, I grabbed to catch the donut box. The phone, I didn't even know it was in my hand.
The chat room is asking if those are the most delicious donuts in the universe. If that's why you didn't drop them.
It was for a group, and we had already eaten all the fabulous donuts. So it was only, it's just absolutely horrible.
I also see Blaze in the chat room, but he's being very quiet so that Michelle doesn't pick up any tips about how to raise him better.
I think she probably already does a pretty awesome job.
Yeah, I mean, she keeps all of us in line. It's no easy task.
Exactly.
All right, guys. So we will be back hopefully next week. So if you have any other questions, just shoot them on over. You can shoot them to George on Twitter. You can shoot them to both of us on Twitter, or you can email us.
Yep, and we'll answer them live.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And because I get yelled at for stopping the show too early, I'm going to wait, a few seconds before I stop.